everyone. Happy Wednesday and welcome to Crew Talk, brought to you by Shoots.video. I'm Sarah Moritz and I will be your host this evening. And today we are talking about editing. So we have a wonderful panel here to tell you all about it. As always, I have my list of questions with me that I will be asking. But if you have any questions now or throughout this whole panel, you can drop them in our Q&A box and we will get to those towards the end. And today is a really, really exciting webinar because we are doing a giveaway at the end. So you will want to stick around because I'll give out more details as we go along throughout this. So stick around for the giveaway. And I guess I'll just kind of dive into it because we have quite a few people here on our panel today. We have 5, I believe. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our panel this evening or this afternoon, depending on where you are. So I'm just going to dive right in and whoever wants to answer can go ahead and do it. How did you become an editor? Anyone can take it away.
I'll start, I guess. I started back in high school, and I'm older, so it was like 2003, 2004, and it's when I kind of first got introduced to editing in general. And the joke back then was, it's like, oh, where's Aaron? Oh, he's in the dark room over there in the AV club. You know, that's if you need to find him, he's over there plinking away. So that's where I really found my love for it. But I didn't start doing it professionally until about 4 or 5 years ago, when both Andy and I started working for a YouTuber called Scott Wynn. And we were doing a lot of his vlogs and his videos and a lot of his editing. And then from there, yeah, we've just kind of built our own business out of that. So it's been great. It's a wild ride.
Awesome. And if it's your first time answering, you can go ahead and say your name also and what you are.
Oh, I'm Aaron Tharp.
Cool. Anyone else want to dive in on how they became an editor?
If nobody else is, go ahead, Mauricio.
Okay, sorry. Well, I started probably over 10 years ago. Pretty much, my first attempt to editing was again in high school. I had to do a short film, and I shot it, and edited. And I remember it was a very old camera, and the first attempt to edit in my super old computer, it took me 2 weeks to edit 2-minute video. And then I moved into cinematography, and then just life took me back into editing. And I've been doing this since over 15 years now. And I think I'm pretty young, so I've been doing it for a while. So I am a lead editor at Blair Media. I'm in charge of all the editing process workflow, and also cinematographer. I do both, but more so to editing and cinematography.
Cool. Andy, what about you?
So I actually, I went to film school. I was dead set on being a cinematographer. And I after I, got out of film school and kind of started working, I remember being on set one day and just being like, I don't really like this that much. And, I kind of just fell into editing. It wasn't really something that I consciously chose, but Aaron kind of mentioned, I got, a job working for a YouTuber. He had a few million subscribers, and he was doing daily vlogs. And I had talked to him, and he was like, "We're looking for help." And he was like, "Can you edit?" And I was like, at the time, I was like, "Yeah, sure, I can edit." And so I went to work for him, and so I was pumping out vlogs every day, and it kind of forced me to learn how to just take a bunch of footage and make something, tell a story with it. And it was kind of through that process that I started to really see the power of editing, kind of understanding that it's a way that you can influence the story, and you can kind of have a little more creative control over things. And I really liked that. And then, from there, it just kind of one thing led to another. And Aaron moved here to Utah, and we started working together. And that's kind of a niche that we found, because I think there's a lot of people that don't like to edit because it's very tedious, and for whatever reason we love it. So it's worked out really well.
Cool. Kyra?
I feel like I'm one of the few that as soon as I knew that you can get a job in the movies, that was a possibility, that I knew that I wanted to be an editor since middle school, high school. and went right into college. And I remember freshman year in film school, they were like, okay, you need to try cinematography and directing and acting. I was like, nope, not necessary. I'm just going to skip it, go right to editing. And everybody looked at me. I was like, you should try. Like, no. I was really, I just kind of forced my editing jobs on everybody and all the students, and literally anybody that would talk to me was like, you need something edited? That was pretty much how I started. So
You knew what you wanted to do. Very cool. So how was your first paid editing gig? Had to be pretty cool, right?
me still?
Yeah, sure. You can take it.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, it was the first pay. I did a lot of, like, I'm sure a lot of everybody here and anybody in the industry did a lot of free work to start. So I had plenty of experience messing up beforehand, I guess, and learning what it really was like to work with a client. So the first paid one was very cool, but I was freaking out. I was anxious. I was a mess. I was an absolute mess, but it was cool. I mean, it was fun, and you learn a lot when somebody actually is like of importance, and you're not sitting in somebody's like living room or in someone's basement, so.
Cool. Anyone else?
I was very fortunate with my first paying gig. It was with an advertising agency, and that was very much throw you in the deep end, like right out of film school, because you're working with multiple clients, multiple demands, multiple styles. And honestly, that was probably some of the greatest education I could ever get as far as like starting off. And that led to a long career there at that agency. So I was fortunate enough to where my first job turned out to be a huge part of my career. And that actually gave me room to grow as far as starting off as an editor with that ad agency. And there were pros and cons to not having any other editor in that agency, as far as, one, I had no kind of master to look up to or some sort of, someone to be an apprentice to. But at the same time, there's no bar for me to hold up to. And there was a lot of pressure off of my shoulders in that way. And I kind of built that department as far as the video department. And that worked up to production manager as far as becoming more of the production side to save money as far as every single time you're renting out to a production house. So it was the greatest training ground for me, I thought, even more than school.
Can I go now?
Sure. Yeah.
Mine was a little bit odd at the first gig, because I got a call for somebody who need somebody who replaced somebody else who was take that gig, and then I said, yeah, sure. What should I have to do? No, you need to bring your computer, edit all this stuff, and simple. You're just gonna be there a couple hours. I said, okay. I show up, and then the guy asked me, hey, do you bring your computer? I didn't have a computer at that time. No. I said, ooh, first red flag. Well, the guy pulled up his computer, a MacBook 13-inch, super small, never used it before, started editing Final Cut 7 at that time. And the guy said, okay, this is the footage. I need this by tomorrow morning. And the gig was overnight, and I didn't know. Nobody told me anything, so I had to work the whole night in a conference room alone. It was me and the security guy outside in this place, and I didn't know what to do. He said, no script, not anything. So it was like, you need to put all this together, blah, blah, blah. So I did what I thought it was right. And he show up in the morning. I show up the thing, say, okay. Well, give your information to the guy for your payment. Bye. And then like 2 months later, I saw the advertise on TV, and he basically used my cut. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, that was pretty.
It's a great feeling to see your work for the first time on like some sort of national televised thing.
Yeah. This was in Chile, basically. Sorry, yeah, because I'm from there, so that was like the place where I was doing.
That's awesome.
I feel like it's such a huge thing. I feel like every one of us or any editor has had that one job where you're like thrown into something overnight by yourself, something super terrifying, and you know nothing. And I feel like that's everybody's like, do I really like this job?
The ultimate test.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very. Yeah, I've been there actually more than one time, so it's not really a good position to be in.
So what is the most complicated part when you have to face the editing process?
I think.
Client.
Well, yeah, for sure. I think for me, just getting to the point where you have like a good solid rough cut is pretty challenging. We try to take a rough like a little bit past a rough, because I feel like it usually like bodes better for the director if they see the rough cut and they're not like super depressed by it. That usually ends up to be like a better working relationship that you have with the director. So we try to like take it maybe just like a step farther than a rough cut. But I think just the process of, going through making string outs, watching all the footage, and then assembling. It's a really fun challenge, but just getting over that first hurdle of the rough cut, I feel like sometimes can be pretty daunting when you're first starting out, especially on something like a feature or something where there's or like a documentary where there's a ton of footage that you have to process and go through, and especially if you're doing that process on your own, you don't maybe have an assistant editor like that. That can be pretty daunting at times.
Anyone else?
What was the question again? Sorry.
What's the most complicated part when you're facing the editing process?
Oh, I will say getting to the head of the director sometimes, because you can read the script, you can have many conversations, and sometimes you do basically a lot of stuff or the cut based on the script on your conversations, but then you get the director coming back say, that's not really what I really think it should be, and then you need to start having more conversation, trying to pull out all that information, ideas he had, and try to put that into the editing and tell the story the way he had it picture in his mind. And also the other thing is complicated is try to suggest your approach to the editing too, because sometimes they are very particular in what they want, but your idea you think it probably will help to the story of the project, and you also need to know when and which moment, how mention that to tell them, I think if we take also your idea and with this approach, probably going to work better. So I will say that's also tricky most of the time.
To bounce off that, I would say that really close to what Mauricio said, but I feel like sometimes it's the footage can only give you so much, and sometimes the director or the client really wants something that unfortunately the actor, or for whatever reason, it just wasn't captured exactly how they envisioned it. So having to give the client what they want in a way that you can provide, and also being able to separate what you think looks good. Sometimes having to give them the client what you don't think. I just feel like it's a lot of psychological balancing of what's possible, what you like, what they want, what they can have. So,
Aaron, were you going to add something?
Oh yeah. So in that same vein, one of the inherent challenges is you're dealing with multiple creatives who all want to be creative. You've got your director, producers, client, yourself, and so it's, as the editor, it's sometimes really difficult to balance the kind of creative energy you have on a project, because it's your job to make it the best you possibly can, as well as deliver what the director wants it to be. And sometimes that means eating a big old slice of humble pie and just being this, even though you feel like as the editor this is the right thing to do, it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, at least not for what the director wants, what for the client wants, the producer wants. Sometimes it's just, you just have to do what they want you to do, while also balancing, they didn't just hire you to push buttons on a computer. They hired you for your instinct, for what you can bring to the project. So finding that balance between the two is crucial to having a smooth process in post.
I would say, adding to that, it's the hardest thing is meeting expectations, living up to expectations, but also doing away with your first draft with this, which is probably the most passion you put into it. That was the narrative, that was the story you chose, and letting go of that, because it's you spent so much time with it. That is the hard part, that first draft.
So does the editing program really matter to be a good editor?
Not to be a good editor, however, in this day and age, to be compatible with clients who might be working off a certain program, it is in your best interest. And I find, just in my experience in the real world, Premiere is usually the standard. I mean, a lot of people go towards Avid, towards Final Cut, which I'm all for. But as far as being compatible with most of the clients that I come across, that usually is the standard I've been using.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's good to be at least fluent enough on most of the major NLEs that you can get by, so that Aaron and I, we both use Premiere the most, but I'm Avid certified, and I used Final Cut for quite a while, and I have a working knowledge of them, and I think that's good, but I think it's more a question of what is the workflow, what are the needs of the project, where's the project going after it leaves your hands, is there any specifications that whoever's doing the finishing on it needs? I really think it's kind of like cameras in a way. It's like there's really nice cameras that are meant for certain things, and then there's just kind of middle of the road cameras that are great for certain things, and it kind of just depends on what your project is and what the needs are.
Yeah, you can cut these days whatever in your phone. I mean, you have really good tools to just edit. I will put it particularly if you want to do just a cut, like you shot a short film and you just want to do a cut and tell the story and build it. You can just do that in whatever. It's not really important the software that you use or don't. I will say the most important is like the perspective you want to give it to the cut, the ideas, pick the right shots, talk to your director or whoever you need to talk and put that together. Or if you are directing, have your ideas clear and a lot of experimentation, I would say, in whatever software you use. It's like you said, it's like the cameras. I mean, you can shoot anything in a point and shoot. The only thing that's different is the quality that you get at the end, but the quality will come with experience, and the better people see your job, you're going to start growing and changing and evolving with the software. Probably you're going to switch to a new, better software, depending on what you want to accomplish at the end.
So what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who wants to become an editor?
Edit. I mean, like, even if you have no clients and you just need to build a portfolio, I can't tell you how much work I've gained just based on my portfolio views. So if you need to go into the woods and just create a story, edit is best advice. Make a portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, my very first job with PlayStation many years ago, I applied for the job and they said, well, you don't have any games experience. I was like, hold on. I took 2 hours. I downloaded every sort of games footage from YouTube as I could, cut a 30-second spot. And I was like, this is games footage. Here's an edit. And they're like, great, you have the job. Like it's just anything, anything, like you said, anything you can edit. Sometimes it's stuff that you might be gross, medical stuff or like boring stuff. Like just do it and learn from it. You're going to learn anything. I still today, every project I do, I learn something while I edit. There's a new trick that I figure out, something I realize could make things easier or tell the story better. Every single project you work on is going to make you better.
I'll say, sorry.
No, go ahead. You're good. Go ahead.
I'll say don't focus on the bling bling of the editing. Don't focus on the effects. Don't focus on the transition. Don't focus on that. I really love a really well cut movie without any transition. If you place the cut in the right spot, you don't need anything else. All those effects sometimes to hide, when they say with good editors when they're not good, you use a lot of transition and effect to try to hide all that. But if you think you're a really good editor, just go for the straight cut. It's always the best tool and the most, it's the best tool for me. It's a straight cut, and that's everything in the right place.
100% agree.
Yeah, a great editor is an invisible editor. You should not even realize they're doing their job if you can't even tell. I also think watch as well. I think it's a combination of consume good editing examples, and because again, in that same vein of like good editing is invisible, sometimes it's hard to know how to be a good editor. And I think, at least like for me, what I like to do is find examples of work that really resonates with me, that I really enjoy the pacing of, I really enjoy the way that the tension is built or that the story is laid out. And then even if it's a matter of just going through a scene and watching it over and over again, you start picking up on these things that were hidden the first time you see them. The fact that like a certain shot conveys a certain idea, or the fact that there isn't a cut in this moment conveys a certain emotional like core to the character. It sounds silly sometimes, but these little things, the motivation and how you cut something can truly change the entire feeling of a scene. And that sometimes comes from experimenting as well as just watching and consuming these examples that are set before us, because we have a plethora of content that we all can consume at our fingertips all the time, and there's no reason why we can't go out there and find the best examples for what we want to do with it. So
yeah, I think Aaron and I kind of talked about this earlier too, and I think a big lesson that I've had to learn is that notes aren't always personal. It's really hard sometimes when you get a list of notes back from a client or a director or producer or whoever to feel like you're being like personally attacked, like that they're just crapping all over your like hard hours, nights worth of work. And you have to kind of learn to like separate that, that instinct to just be like, oh no, what I did is right. And try to get in the mindset of, how are they looking at this? What is this supposed to mean? Like, is there any merit to what these notes are saying, even though I might not agree with it? You have to kind of like learn to check your ego a little bit and realize that at the end of the day, it's the story that is the most important, and whatever needs to be done to uphold that and to move that in the right direction is ultimately like what you have to do, even sometimes if you have to grit your teeth a little bit to do it.
Yeah.
So what are some things to know when editing for a client that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
I know when I first started, my first few hired actual paid gigs, they asked me for a rough cut, and they would come maybe 5 hours earlier, if I was on site, or they come the day before and asked to see what I had edited. And sometimes you're put on the spot to show a cut that's not ready. And I feel like that's something that nobody in school or anybody like really prepared me for. Like, what do you do when, you're in a position where the edit is not ready? And something I guess I learned very quickly is that, especially when working for a client, a rough cut to an editor is very different than a rough cut to a client.
Yes.
So when you show your client, a rough edit, there should be no mistakes that are editing mistakes. The audio pops, the music, or the black frame. If there's any of that stuff, that's way before a rough cut. And that's something that I didn't know when I first started. I was like, there's still a few pieces missing, but I'm looking for a shot to put in this music thing. And there's, I'm still going to add this. And I had to like have this whole explanation before they even watched it. And that was already that was like a red flag. Which in school, they teach you like, oh, it's okay. Like, you're still figuring it out. Like, this is your rough cut. When you're working with a client, a rough cut is not rough. It's new. It's still figuring things out, but there should be no mistakes that the client can say, as an editor, you messed up technically. That's something I wish I had known much earlier.
That's good advice. Anyone else?
Let's say, know your self-worth, especially getting in at the very beginning as a freelancer. You kind of just want the job no matter what, and a lot of times you might sacrifice what you're actually worth, time-wise, rate-wise, just to be that, just a person to get that job. So I have a price sheet set. Know your worth, and know when to settle. This is not always going to be set in stone, but just know when to get into the car and when not to get into the car. And I wish I would have had that kind of confidence at the beginning.
I agree.
Yeah, I will say confidence is really hard to build. Because while you're even editing, I don't know, this happened to me. It's like sometimes I have a project pretty much done and I'm never 100% satisfied. I always think something could have done better. But when you show it, people say, oh, it's a great job, great job, great job. It's like, okay, are you saying it for real, or could you give me some extra feedback that maybe will help me to grow or improve? So it's really sometimes hard to get those comments in order to grow personally in your editing. Could be the technique or I don't know, whatever workflow. I don't know. That stuff, it's really complicated.
As much as I say know your self-worth, I wish I could say it goes away. You're always going to question yourself, no matter how experienced you get. You're always going to question your own self-worth.
I think one other thing that I wish I had known, and it's one of those that it's like it should be so obvious, but until you're like confronted with it, at least for me, you don't really recognize it, and that is clients don't have the experience you do in the world that you work in. And like, so for example, we all understand the process, right? It's like building a house. You're not going to start painting the walls if the plumbing isn't done, or you're not going to start putting the furniture in if the framing isn't finished. Post-production has a very specific process that, it's A, B, C in this order, and there's reasons for it. And I'm sure we all know clients don't always look at it that way. They look at, I want to be picking out the furniture. I want to be putting it in place, but we're not there yet. So just understanding to be like, I wish that I had learned from the beginning just how to communicate better with either clients or producers or whoever that isn't as familiar with the post-production process, even in the industry. I'm surprised sometimes to find out just people who aren't in that just don't really understand it. Like maybe I don't understand some things in production, as well as maybe I should. Same thing with post. They don't necessarily understand why you need it a certain way or why it needs to be done in a certain way. So having that patience and that ability to educate, I suppose, and like help them through it, as well as being able to be flexible with how they need it done is pretty key. Keeping that good working relationship no matter what.
Awesome. So is there some terminology or slang that a client or those in the field have used that wasn't taught to you in school?
I think there's definitely a lot of that. I think I also think you kind of have to like learn how to interpret, like sometimes client speak and editor speak are very different things, and so you kind of have to like interpret like one that we run into a lot is like microseconds. Like let's take a couple microseconds off that, and it's like that's not a term that we use as editors, but you have to kind of interpret that to mean like frames. And so it's kind of along with what Aaron was saying, is like you have to learn how to sort of meet them at their like knowledge level and explain things to them in a way that they understand. So it like works both ways, right? It's like there's obviously like tons of terms and stuff that I didn't know coming into post that you just kind of gather by context, but you also have to learn sometimes how to reverse engineer that to explain it to somebody that might not even be familiar with the world of post at all.
Yeah, I will say the same thing that Kara was talking before. Is like in the case of the rough cut. The rough cut is a really good example. A rough cut, and when you're editing movies, is a very simple cut of the story that tells the story. But a rough cut for a project for a client is pretty much the whole thing, pretty much done in my experience. I mean, and then you have to like deal with that stuff. And also in my case, is like when I moved here. The whole language is different for the one that I already learned, so I've had to relearn a lot of the language and the terminology used in the industry. And I will say I'm still learning, because also it's everyday new things that are coming in, and also it depends who you're working with. That person also had their own language and their own way to express their ideas. So that's sometimes really tricky, because you thought that you knew what that mean, but this person comes with another meaning for the same thing, and you need to start like kind of translating what they're trying to tell you. So yeah, it's a work in progress for me, at least. It's still.
Yeah, there's definitely been some clients where like they'll go in and be like, by the way, I call a bumper a bong. I'm like, okay, like I know that's actually a very recent thing, but like I feel like in general, like Mauricio was saying, there's sometimes clients, they have the exact same thing in mind, but they just have their own word for it. And I've been lucky where clients will say, we call this something different. I know it's different, but that's what we call it. So get used to it. Whereas other times they'll just start talking what I feel like is some sort of like super, I don't know, LA or whatever language. I'm like, what are we talking about? But I think the big thing for me was that in school, I went to film school. I know a lot of people didn't go to film school. And as a little flag to anybody who wants to be an editor, it's not necessary to go to film school. Save your money. Please save your money if you can. I wish somebody told me. But in film school, they really teach you how to edit feature length films, like drama films. Like that's the main thing you are taught, and nobody teaches you, especially, I'm not that old, but like even when I was going to school, like there really wasn't a YouTube, Facebook, Instagram world out there. So the whole concept of advertising online and the different types of content you need to edit and have like the different bumpers and bugs and different things to add on it. And a bug is a little like logo you see in the bottom corner of whatever you're watching. Usually I think what everybody universally calls that a bug. I'm not sure. You can correct me if there's another word for it. But there's just a lot of stuff where in school they just didn't teach you the other realms of editing and different clients and different types of avenues. There's so much more than watching Spotlight or something, so even though I love that movie, great edited movie, but there's just so much more than that. And that's something that you feel like when you choose what you want to edit, that's a whole other world of terminology you're going to get into.
So how do you know what to cut when you're editing?
Really good question. I'll say, go ahead, Aaron.
I'm sorry. I'll be quick. Yeah, it's kind of the age old question of like what to cut, what not to cut, right? And every type of video or every type of project you're working on always has like different, a different answer to that. But it's a combination of just like understanding what material you have in a project. So for example, like on a feature, like you need to know from beginning to end what information has been presented. You need to understand where the characters are at. You need to understand where your story and your theme is at, so that as you go through and cut, you need to make sure that you're not cutting vital arteries to the story, that you're making sure that that is there. Also, you have to be careful of like doing it too much. It's one of the most like challenging things as an editor is it's like to cut, you cut too much, you cut too little. It's too long, it's too short. Getting that pacing right is crucial. And I hope this doesn't sound pretentious, but in many ways it's like a second sense. There's that internal pacing and that rhythm that you just sort of either have or you learn while editing, that you understand that's like, this is too short, this is too long. It's actually something cool that Andy and I have been able to, what we do is, since we both edit, if I like produce or direct something, he edits mine and vice versa, so that we're not too close to a project, that we're constantly being open to maybe it being cut in a way we didn't see in our head when we were shooting it or when we were directing it. And so that helps us kind of always keep a fresh mind. And we know that that's not always accessible, but I think being able to look at it not just the one way that you saw it in your head or your instinct was first, but being able to work through it and then following that internal sort of rhythm, that internal sort of, that pacing that you can feel in any given project. It's there, you just have to discover it. So. Yeah,
I agree with you a lot of that. I don't know, seven sense, when I call it. I call it editing with the gut. But yeah, I would say it's also depending on the project. You can, I don't know, if you are editing an ad is very simple. You have the script, there's so many shots done, 7, 10. You just put that together and you just tweak here and there and you're done. Then you have, cooperatives. It's an interview, you just put it there, follow the script. If there isn't a script, if not, you just listen to the question, you just cut it, make it look pretty, very pro, done. But when you're doing a short or you're doing a movie, or maybe you're actually doing, an ad, but it has it has to be more intense regarding feelings, when you're trying to get into a non-profit organization and you're trying to cap people to, donate money, like that stuff. It's like, okay, I sit down, I read the script, I do the cut based on the script just to have it laid out and build the story, basically. And then is when the gut comes in and say, okay, this is the moment he's saying it, cut, cut, and you start like, as you said, Aaron, you start like feeling it, and you start flowing. The footage start flowing in you, and you start flowing with the footage. And then it's like when you're driving, there's like a connection with the car. In this case, with the editing, and and you start like kind of have an idea how is this going and where it's going. I don't know. That's when a lot of that happened with me, at least. It's a lot of the feeling. How am I feeling this edit? And when I'm not sure, I usually call somebody, I don't know, at the office and say, can you watch it and tell me what do you think? I mean, your idea is this is what I'm trying to do. Are you feeling it or not? When you get the note, then you change the approach and you go in a different direction and try to tweak here and there. Also have the music help, sound effects, the tone of what you're seeing on the screen also help, the color, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I will say that's at least mine.
I'll also say that organization is a big part for me as far as what to know, what to cut. Because to everything that Mauricio said, there's a passion, there's that inherent cut that should be, but dealing with clients, it may not be what you envision. So to future-proof, I always like to say trimming the fat, especially with a lot of my work is like interview work and multicam work. It's trimming out the question part. It's trimming out the ers and the ums when possible to see what complete thoughts are there and log them in my timeline as far as markers, so that every single person who's interviewed, every single B-roll reel you pretty much have a reel of all the meat and potatoes. Because once you trim the fat, all that's left is what you want there that's usable. And so if it comes that your first assembly wasn't what the client wants, at least everything is organized where it has to be as far as the different takes, or what if we switch that to this line, or what if we switch that to this B-roll shot, everything is there at your tips to where you can still have that flow, but be organized as far as when those versions 3, version 17 happens with the client.
I'd also add to that is something that I'm not sure if someone told this to me or if I figured it out, but it's something I've been saying to anybody that like I train and help like get into editing, is that with every single edit, when possible, which I think it's like 95% of the time, that whenever possible, every single cut that you make should teach the viewer something new. And something that's hard to be able to like understand what that means. But sometimes if you're doing an interview and they kind of say the exact same thing, but in a different way, that's still interesting, but they ultimately did say the same thing, or the B-roll shot really just teaches the same thing. It's still the same angle, the same product. It didn't show a different feature, a different button, or a different how big it is, or something along those lines, depending on the content. But if possible, every single time you edit something, you should teach your viewer something new. If it's the same thing, why we don't need it.
Awesome.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think another thing too is that I think there's this kind of pressure as an editor when you have a lot of footage that you feel like you have to use all of it, and you're like, oh, I have to use this shot, because you think about just the sweat equity that went into that shot even existing on set, and so you feel like you have to like include everything. And I think it's really important that you kind of get past that, and again, like's been said, is like you focus on the edit and on what the information and the story that needs to be presented is, because it's really easy to get caught up in that web of like, well, I need to use this shot, or they did this really cool like oneer and I don't want to like interrupt that, and so you have to kind of get over that anxiety of feeling like if not every shot's in there, that the cinematographer is going to be like knocking on your door like, hey, why didn't you put this as my favorite shot? So it's just a little thing that you kind of have to mentally move past, for sure.
To bounce off that, I've had some times where some cinematographers actually have called me and said like, I really love this shot, but like what I'll do, and like depending, like I wouldn't offer this to all people, like as a disclaimer, like it's not for everybody, but sometimes I'll pull what I think are the really nice shots and pull like the best takes of them, and I'll make like a little cinematography reel so that they can have it for, especially now for social, they can use it. It's not going to end up in the cut. Like here's a little like 30-second of like nothing actually cut. It's just the shots that looked really nice. Here you go. And that way everybody's happy, just in case you feel that guilt.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. That is.
Yeah. Another thing I would like to mention, I don't know if it's really connected with the question or not, but I think it's worth to say is, as an editors, we also have the power to manipulate the footage in so many ways, not only with the cut. So sometimes, you're editing and you don't have that close-up. Well, now with 4K, we have the chance to punch into the footage and get that close-up as close as we can get. Or we can flip shots and we can manipulate in different ways the footage to get that particular shot that we need, or that particular scene that we need to tell the story. So I think that was worth to mention, because some people think it's just, oh, you shot it, you just chop it and add a transition here and there, you tell the story, you're done. No, sometimes happen like, oh, dude, I didn't have that second angle for this camera, so I couldn't get the close-up. Okay, let's punch in. Sometimes it get blurry, but some, depending on the project, some people as producer or director are more technical. They want everything clear, sharp, super defined on the screen. But some other doesn't care about that, and they care more about the story. So they don't care if you punch in and the shot is a little bit softer, because what is more important is to tell the story. And that's also super important to know and tell everybody who want to be an editor. You can play with that, and you can create even shots from other shots. You can merge two together and do some. It kind of gets into the limit of the VFX, if you want to call it, without really using any particular special program. Just in this case, it could be Final Cut or After Premiere. You can merge two shots and play with them and try to create that couple of shots that you're missing, or add something new.
Sorry, I was going to say, to bounce right off of that, is that I see there's a question here that kind of like feeds into that, saying like, if there was a shot missing, like what do you do? And like specifically this question is asking like if somebody was crossing the room and the director didn't get coverage of the actor walking. And I've had a few different instances where, whether it be that and you can punch in on a close-up, but you can also use sound effects of Foley of footsteps walking on a wooden floor to cover that. You can use audio. I know video editing, you only think about the visual, but audio is 50% of the content you're watching, and video editing, as a video editor, we are still responsible for the audio editing. I feel like that's something people forget about, and that really can make or break your entire video edit if your audio is crap. Like it really can. So really manipulating the audio, the footsteps, if you wanted to cross and that shot wasn't done. Or actually, I've had certain scenarios where I was editing something and there was a hum in the background. I'm sure we've all had it where there's either a refrigerator on or something. There was like this awful noise, but it was only captured in some of the footage, but not all of it. So every time you cut to a different character or a different person, you hear this annoying buzz in the background. So you take room tone and you put it under. So sometimes you have to take the mistakes that are made and make it part of your edit. So now the entire scene is going to have this buzz and they're going to like it because that's it, that you can't take it out. Or if there's a creak in the wood and like there's this really annoying random noise that keeps happening, or airplanes keep flying over, like fine, add 5 more airplanes that weren't actually there. That way it feels like it was part of the scene, and try to enhance it so it doesn't feel like a mistake. It was intentional. So audio is something that's really important that I feel like we forget. And after editing for such a long time, we just know, but it's something that when you're starting out, like it doesn't come naturally, I feel like.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm beginning to believe that audio right now is more than 50, to be honest. In my experience, yeah, you can present a video with a really bad quality and a good audio, and people will say, it looks great. But if you show a really good video with bad audio, and people, it doesn't really, we're gonna say, I don't like it. It doesn't really look good. It doesn't feel good. I don't know. I saw that experiment on YouTube. So somebody posted like a full movie in bad quality and then a good quality with bad audio, and the bad quality movie with the good audio, the people prefer that. So it's like it's telling you something. Audio. Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. So we actually had an experience with something with this. We were working on a horror movie a couple years ago, and there was a scene where this like sister was attacking her older sister with a knife, and they did all their coverage, but then the older sister pushes her sister back and she crashes into a bathtub. But they didn't have coverage of the pushback. All they had was like a medium of the sister pushing, and that was it. So we're like, what do we do? There's no impact. There's no moment. Like we tried like doing it with sound. Even there was like a pickup, and it wasn't working. And like, what do we do to sell this moment? And we did something that's kind of a cardinal sin. We took another take and we reversed it, and we didn't reverse it. We reversed like the footage so that instead of her pushing her forward, it looks like her sister's pushing her back. And I mean, it was just like, what are we doing? But it works. It's fast enough, and it like you never notice. So I think being able to like not pre-decide something is bad or wrong as an editor, just being willing to play and experiment with something that might even just be terrible. You never know until you try it, and then once you hit it, like that's it. That's the solution.
So true.
So when you get hired for a project, are there certain things you do in preparation before you start editing?
Oof, a lot. Who wants to go first?
I think, I mean, this seems pretty obvious, but I think reading the script and it's something that I think is kind of hard, right? To really like sit down and put yourself in that mindset of really like trying to visualize the cut from the script. I mean, this feature that we're working on now was a really cool experience, like reading this script, because there was like certain moments that I had very like specific ideas for in the cut. And, then when you get the footage, you're kind of already like primed to dig in, and you already sort of have like an idea of how it should play out. So I think like really digging into the script, and I also think having conversations with the director, and getting ideas of like what movies do they really respond to, like what do they consider to be a really well cut film, and just trying to like get an understanding of the style of the movie and what you need to bring to it as an editor. Ideally even before cameras roll is huge. I've worked as a DIT on several of the features that I've also edited, and that's been kind of a unique experience too, because like rolling into the edit, I know what footage is there, and I'm there on set, and so I can I can kind of say like, hey, I noticed like we don't have this shot, and if we could grab a pickup of that like right now, that would be great. So that's another thing too, is like if you can get on set, even not like you have to be there every day, but if you can just kind of be there and rubbing shoulders with everybody, I do think that is a good thing, just to give you a little bit of extra, just so you can kind of understand the vibe and the tone of the film.
I actually, not all the time, but the cardinal sin where there's sometimes I make a point not to read the script at all. And I say that because sometimes, unfortunately, not all the time, especially if I'm working with a new client where, sometimes you can get a vibe off of them that, so unfortunately, regardless of what the dream is, what the script is going to be, they hope the actor is going to portray it in a certain way, and they hope the cinematographer is going to film it in a certain way. At the end of the day, the footage that they got is what they got. And a lot of the time what they filmed is not what they wrote. And that's not bad. Sometimes that's great. You have all these different creative minds becoming involved now and enhancing and making things feel differently while they're on set. That sometimes when I read the script, I have a certain vibe of what I'm getting into, and then I actually get the footage and it's not at all what I initially expected the script, what I had felt from it to feel. So obviously that's like awful to say, but sometimes I feel like I can move faster if I don't have those predetermined notions of what I'm getting into. But to feed off of the DIT thing, I didn't know for a long time what a DIT was when I started out. And I feel like it's a really important job that I feel like every editor should try to do once or twice. Like you just really have a value of how important organizing is. And I feel like you need to work as a DIT the first few times, even if you're the assistant DIT, that's even better. I feel like that's a job that every editor should do. And it wasn't something I knew about until I did my first few DIT jobs. I was like, wow, man, I'm going to approach my whole editing organization way differently now. So.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Bouncing off that, I would also say it should be obvious, but as much as like it's not what they said they're going to shoot and what comes into your computer is not the same. The other side of the coin is sometimes you kind of have amateurs who are, especially in this day and age of film production, everyone who's filming is not necessarily a cameraman or woman. So it might sound obvious, but a big thing is just organizing your footage before you start your edit. Like set up all the syncs, if you have someone who filmed an iPhone for 30 minutes vertically, change all the framings, get everything set to frame size, interpret all your footage to the frame rate to make it slow motion. Get it all out of the way so that when it comes time to be creative, you can just be creative and not have to stop at a roadblock and start assembling a new setup or a new multicam setup. Get it all out of the way and then just flow with it.
Yeah. And also to mention the preparation beside all what you guys said is in my case, we work in a production company and we receive project for many editors sometimes. And some projects are bigger than others. So you really need to think on workflow. How is going to be my workflow? Part of that is, it seems from the beginning, reading the script, how the story is going to be and all that stuff. Organization, which this is something I could hopefully everybody get into it. Organization is really important. I think we all have to say it right now. But in my case, it's really, really important because I'm working not only by myself. If you work by yourself, you can do whatever you want in your program and organize whatever you want because you are the only one working with those files. But when you put more people in the plate, everybody needs to speak the same language, not only literal language, but in the organization inside the program. So where's going to be the footage? Where's going to be the graphics? Where's going to be the music? Where's going to be the sound effects? How is that folder going to be? Where is that going to be located? In your computer, in the server? Proxies, how we're going to make the proxy. We're going to make it big, smaller, etc. And all that has to be very, very structured at the beginning. And as we said, is you have to spend that time being more technical at the beginning, more techie. Not a lot of people like that, but I learned it hard. I made a bunch of mistakes until now I'm super focused. Okay, I need to have everything super organized. And I'm very sometimes, I ask a lot the people who work with us, to please follow that because when we bring the project back and then we need to reconnect or I need to send that project to another editor later because we are busy with another project, that other editor is having issues like, I cannot open this, I cannot find this file, this is not in the folder that it's supposed to be. So it created a whole little kind of issues that it pile on and a huge snowball that a delay the whole project could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, because some of the files are so massive that you need to transcode. If you are working in 8K now or 4K and you are working off a laptop, you need to transcode that, and that take hours. And send the footage now, send it through internet. Also, that could take days to send the footage through internet, because not always is possible to send it in a hard drive through FedEx. Also, it's depending on budget and all that stuff. So yeah,
in this day and age, I would say that's the hidden beast, is the transfer of files online.
Yeah, and people also said, yeah, send them through Dropbox. Yeah, Dropbox, yeah. Do you have the 500 gigs that you need in Dropbox to receive that? No, I only have one. Well, how are you going to receive everything then?
Yeah, do you have 3 years to wait for this to download?
Yeah. Just can't stress organization enough. Like there is nothing that has made life either more miserable or more blissful than proper or bad organization. And like, especially when you're like inheriting something from another editor, it can be really difficult to just like, sometimes, I don't know, for us, it's like usually we just start over. So it's usually easier just because we have our system that works for us and we try and make it clear and concise. And even then you can always improve. Sometimes you get stuff from editor that's better than what you have. And it's nice to be able to go, oh, I see why they did that. That's nice. Let's incorporate that. But taking that time, the boring side of editing, to making sure that you're organized both in your assets, because sometimes you're dealing with, preaching to the choir here, hundreds, thousands of files, maybe more, like both video and otherwise. And if they're not properly there, then you're screwed before you even begin. So organizing from the beginning, and while you're editing and while you're exporting and while you're, you can get lost in the weeds so fast if you don't have a system that works.
And backups. I forgot to mention
that.
If you have a RAID, if you have a RAID, that's not a backup. Remember that. It's not a backup. You have a backup in another place, and hopefully in a third place or in a fourth place.
If nothing else, I was going to say, like, at least duplicate your sequences and copy your sequence somewhere. That's one thing that I'm sure every editor on the planet Earth has learned more than once, that they got notes from something, they did something, and then the client, of course, was like, you know what, I like the other way better. But you didn't duplicate the sequence from before, and you have to go by memory, or you have to go by your previous edit and actually spend hours of work recreating it rather than just going back to a different sequence. It's something, anytime you open my project file, not even, every time I go to my computer, I duplicate the project file within my Finder window, or if you're on your PC, I forget what that's called, I'm sorry. Or then when you're in your editing software, I immediately duplicate and rename my sequence to something that makes sense, not just like a bunch of scrambled letters, which I know a lot of people did in the very beginning, actually number 1, 2, 3, rough cut 1, final cut 2, like actually define what it is. But that, yes, back up and then copy that project file onto a desktop, onto another drive. The media is annoying. That can be retransferred. The amount of hours and time you put into your edit, the only place it exists is in that project file. Duplicate it, save your life.
Some advice that no one ever told me is, and just as obvious, don't make your autosave in your project folder. Put your autosave to another drive.
We actually, and don't trust technology. We just had like a drive that was a really, really high-end drive, an expensive drive with a brand new project. I worked on it for 8 hours, almost done on the edit, and the drive just brand new drive just crashed. I lost everything. Thankfully, there was a backup of all the footage, but I lost all the work. And that was my bad. That's actually one of those things that's like, okay, now we have a new system for making sure that even if this happens again, it's not going to happen again. So again, you still learn. You can do it for years and still find things that's like, you know what? I can do better. So don't trust technology. It will fail you.
In your scratch this settings, same as project is the enemy.
Well, exactly. Well, that, and make sure that you save your autosave, or when you save your project, first off, change your autosave to 3 hours to every 5 minutes, because your Premiere is set up to go. You can do a lot in 5 minutes, my friends. You can do a lot.
Yep.
So, and let alone an hour.
Well, it's true. Yeah.
Let alone an hour or two, first off. So change your default settings, go in there and actually go into all those annoying menus and whatever editing software you're using and actually look at that stuff. You'll find a lot of really fun tricks that the software actually wants to help you with. You're just ignoring, first of all. And then, yes, just duplicate and save it and Oh man, I feel like every one of us has like nightmares at the amount of times we just ruined everyone's life. People around us, our families, like, why can't you have dinner? Because I ruined everything, you know.
The hard life lessons.
Yeah, let me give you a tip for our audience is carbon copy cloner. It's gonna save your life. You can keep your autosave in another drive, you know, the 5 minutes one. But with this one, you can set it up by automatically to back up everything, your project folder with all the assets, all your footage every hour or whatever time you want. So it's gonna be updating everything, and it will never delete the previous one when he update. It will keep it there until the disk is too full. It will delete the oldest one and it will add the new one. So you're always gonna have a backup, and you can do that with multiple drives. It's I can sleep well now because of that.
So we do have a question in our audience box. It's from Doug. Hi, Doug. Glad to have you here. So it says, one seasoned ad agency producer had a rule for estimating editorial costs. For every person in the edit bay reviewing a rough cut, he added 2 hours to the budget. Do you find that agencies and their clients waste a lot of editorial time above the post hours estimated?
I don't understand the question, to be honest.
I kind of do, and my answer to that is, yeah, they round up. That seems extreme, the example you just gave, but I could say that agencies round up because they're acting as the middleman. They need to have a surcharge to make their money. So as far as the time it would take a normal freelancer and what you're seeing on the invoice, I hope I'm not giving myself too much away with the agencies I work with, but yeah, I would definitely say that they round up.
I agree. They usually tend to overcharge sometimes, not because they're trying to rip anybody off, but it's because they're trying to cover their assets a little bit in order to make sure the project is done. And if there's any issue, there's enough time to fix that issue. And also, to be honest, I never had that issue here, but at least in my country, one time an agency booked like a week for a 30-second commercial. And we finished in like 4 hours. So it was like really ridiculous. So it's not only here. I think it's in many places, agency do the same.
Also, yeah, to Mauricio's point, there is a trade-off because in the editing, or at least the agency world, it was due yesterday. So you learn how to do fast turnaround times to where if you're a freelancer editor, you're not under the gun maybe as much. So there is a give and take as far as what they round up and what they have as far as a deadline in their head compared to what a normal freelancer might have.
Yeah, and also that came from the old days when you have all the footage in film. You had to have all that time on transfer, conversion, and all that stuff go to the Cinetel and do all the editing and adjustments. So that required a lot of time. So some agency keep their costs up in order to justify some of the stuff. And in other cases, the project is really complex. I need a lot of VFX and stuff. It's dependent also on the project.
I was at the last leg of the agency I was at where they're using the beta tapes to send to the stations for commercials. It wasn't like an FTP client at that point. It was just transferring over. But yeah, that did take a lot of time.
So those were all wonderful answers to the questions that I had for you guys. And we're going to get to a really fun thing that we haven't done before, our giveaway. We're giving away a $50 B&H gift card. I love B&H. They have everything. And so how we're doing this is I'm going to have all of our participants, except the panel. Unfortunately, you guys can't play. But you're going to, in the chat box, put in a number 1 through 100. And I have a nifty little app here on my phone that I'm going to hit randomize. It's going to pick a number 1 through 100. And whoever has that number or closest to it, you win the gift card. So while all of our participants are putting their number in the chat box, I'm going to have every member of our panel just go through, say your name and your social, kind of like self-promotion time. You can say your website, where people can find you, see your work. So Kyra, I want to start with you.
Sure. I have a website on kyrabosca.myportfolio.com. It's the Adobe Creative Suite website builder thing, which is kind of nice if you don't know that you can do that on Adobe, included in your thing. And I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on a bunch of stuff, but I'm really not hard to find. There's really very few people named Kyra in this world, let alone my ridiculous long last name. So,
Awesome.
Auni Issa. You can find me anywhere on social media platforms with my full name, first and last name. Also, it looks like nuclear codes, so I can understand if you can't pronounce it. You can also reach me at Play Now Productions. That is my company and website. Besides that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Let's work together.
Aaron and I are in the process of rebuilding our website. We merged our businesses earlier this year, and so now we're going under the same name, which is Timber Picture Company. So hopefully within the next month, when we're done with the job that we're currently working on, we can have time to finish the website, but it's timberpicture.co. And then my Instagram handle is ac.matthews, 2 T's in Matthews.
Cool.
Okay, my mail is mauricio@blairmedia.net. You can find or see some of my work at blairmedia.net, the website. And you can follow me on Instagram as Mauricio Tapia DOP. You can see some of my edits and pictures and stuff that I post over there.
Very cool. And Aaron, I'm guessing you let Andy speak for you and your company.
Oh yeah, sorry.
An
yeah.
Instagram page you wanted to promote.
It's Aaron Tharp Pro. But yeah, it's just mostly it's going to be Timber Picture Co. for everything. So Timber Picture Co. on Facebook and Instagram and our website. So it's exciting, actually. It should be a lot of fun. We're almost there, and it's been a long time coming. So it's always, fitting that into everything else you got to do in this line of work. It's having to promote yourself is always seems to be the hardest part.
Well, that's great. Okay, so I hope everybody who's been a participant has submitted their number into the chat box. And I have, like I said, this I'm going to put it closer. So it's on 93 right now, but I'm going to hit randomize. Oh, Doug, you're told to pick a number if Doug is still with us before I go for it. 3, 2, 1. Doug, where are you? Okay, we're going to go for it. So to show you guys it's legit. 41. So if we have a 41 or closest to it, congrats. I think, and Corbin will be messaging you about your gift card. And I think I think it was Michael, but Denise. See, I can't be in charge of picking the winners. But anyway, congratulations. Enjoy your B&H gift card. And thank you guys so much for being here on our panel this evening. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody who was watching did as well. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. And as always, I'm Sarah Morintz. You can find me at sarahmorintz.com or on Instagram at Sarah Morintz. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Great to talk to you guys.
You might be looking at Shoot Stop Video and thinking, so how does this all work? Is this about A, setting up the whole crew for me, B, just giving me options and having me handle it, or C, something in between? Well, it's D, all of the above. To put it simply, we're here to help you in any way that we can to get the crew and talent you need for your next production. We believe that every level of video production can benefit from a well-maintained list of qualified crew members for every position. This goes for pre-pro, on-set, and for post. Every project is different, so if you need a producer to help manage the decision-making process, then we can totally do that. If you're already a producer and want to build your own crew from scratch, then go for it. We're here to make your next production a success. And if you are crew or talent looking for producers that want you, then you've come to the right place. Sign up now, and also leave a referral for any solid people that you know that are already on here. Thank you for considering Shoot Stop Video, and happy shooting!